All righty. So I think, guys, is everybody comfortable with kicking this off since we've got a quorum? Okay. All right, hold on a second. I got a screen now popped up. Got it. All righty. So comments from the public. I do not see any public. Is any public on this, guys? There's Colette. Any public on the feed, guys? I don't see any. Nope. Okay. So we're going to skip past this. How you doing, Colette? Say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Here you go. All righty. So consent agenda. We've got the July draft of the minutes, and then we got the monthly financial update. Everybody should have had an opportunity to take a look at them and review them. Any questions or comments? Or Christine, do you want to jump in on something on? Oh, Christine's shaking her head. Yes.
I just want to make one note on the P&Ls, the profit and loss statement. You'll see a $60,000 line item for state funding source. That was a holding place for applying for the Virginia Housing Development Grant. So that $60,000 isn't for operation of the RHP. It's for that program, and that funding I can't move off of this P&L until we revise our budget in the spring. So you'll always see that $60,000 in there, but it is not funding for the RHP. Only the $25,000 is. I needed somewhere to put it, and we couldn't create a new program code until we knew we were getting the grant. So I placed it in the RHP program code.
And you're going to talk a little bit more about that in your executive comments. Okay, great. Any other thoughts or comments on minutes and financial update? If not, I'd love to hear a first and a second, and we'll approve them.
Move to accept.
Thank you, Greg. Somebody second, please. Need a second? Thank you, Ned. Thank you, Ned. All in favor, just say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All right, cool. Thank you, guys. Appreciate that. Next up is the speaker series, and that's a combination of Stacy and Ian. So I guess, Stacy, since you're the chair, I'll let you kick that off.
Thanks, Keith.
You know what are friends for?
So we are in the stages of planning for the next round of speaker series webinars. We're going to split them over the fall and winter. So there will be sessions in October and November, and then January and February will be about December due to the holidays. And that gives staff time to really organize each one. The October session, because that's coming up fairly quickly, we're going to look at doing getting updates from each of the member jurisdictions in the region to talk about what they're doing, whether it's housing wise. I know there's comprehensive plan updates happening, zoning updates. So we will wrap all of that into that first session. We are also looking at doing a session on missing middle housing issues in rural housing. There is one, and help me out, Ian, that I am missing.
We're the other one was about like lesser known housing funding mechanisms, but we're not quite sure how we're basically, I'm using this week to try and flesh that out, and then if we're not able to feel comfortable filling out a whole hour with that, we're probably going to use Greg Powell. He suggested faith-based organizations and their housing work, and that would probably be the other option for the fourth session. Yeah.
Well, can I make a clarification?
Yes.
I did not suggest this topic.
All right.
I did not offer to do this topic despite your minutes.
Fair enough.
I'm happy with a reasonable period of time. We're now working with 3 faith-based groups to see if I could pull something together, but don't do something on me with like 2 weeks notice here.
We will not.
Well, Greg, excuse me to interrupt you. I've heard 2 things in this. Are you saying the minutes are incorrect and should we go back and amend them? Is that what we're saying?
It's all right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
But
thank you.
We're just getting started with all 3, and I would be much more comfortable if we were well into the project, so that the organizations, the clients, could feel more comfortable talking about what they're doing.
Well, if this is the opportunity to amend them, if you wish, Greg.
Well, I think if we found that fourth topic that Stacy and Ian were talking about, if that one didn't work, we would certainly first talk to you, Greg, and see if we're at a point where it could be a session. If not, we can kick it into another, the next spring or the fall, or we can
Yeah.
still put it in the pipeline, just maybe not.
I'm
do
just
it
saying
right
I'd be
away.
much more comfortable in the spring.
Yeah.
If we're going to do that topic.
Yeah, we would not ask you to do that before next year. So that's.
Ian just did, so that's why this came up.
Sorry, no, I that was just the fourth. It was going to be in the spring. We were not going to.
Spring is good.
So the second thing, real quick, Greg, thank you for bringing it up. Does everybody on this call know Ian? Has everybody been introduced to Ian? Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Couldn't recall if everybody was
Colette,
introduced
have
to.
you? I don't think you were on the last executive committee.
Yeah.
No, I don't
So
think he has.
so Ian, do us a huge favor. Take a minute, introduce yourself to everybody in your new role for over here for Colette's benefit and everybody's benefit. Thank you.
Okay. Hey everyone again. My name is Ian Baxter. I am the new one of the new planners at the TJPDC. So I'm working primarily in the housing field. So my major responsibilities include the RHP, the PDC housing development grant that we received from Virginia Housing, and then also the Virginia Eviction Reduction Pilot Program. But yeah, so I'm sort of taking over from Lucinda as the TJPDC's main staff person for the RHP. So any administrative questions or planning questions, I will be the person to talk to. So it's good to see everyone here.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that, Ian. And Colette, would you introduce yourself to Ian just in case he doesn't know who you are?
And I'm Colette Sheehy. I'm serving on the board as a representative of the University of Virginia. I'm the Senior Vice President for Operations and State Government Relations. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Thank you. And Anthony, thank you for joining us. All right, let me get back to my agenda. I'm working remotely, guys. I'm working with the agenda off of my phone, so give me one moment. Anything else to add on the speaker series? Ian, are you good with this? And Stacy too, or you anything else to add?
We will, Ian's working on getting sponsorship letters out to help get money for those particular sessions. And that's all that I have.
So how was the turnout in the meeting, guys? Did the other members show up?
We had a few, yeah. There's
Yeah.
always a couple.
Well, it's just it's a topic that we're going to probably bring up a little bit later in the agenda, just for folks to hear. We're trying to get. I'm trying to get a little bit better with attendance across the board. So just a little feedback on that would be great. All right. Anything else from anybody else on the speaker series? Are you guys still willing to take some topic suggestions from other members, or are we set for the rest of the year?
No, we are always open for topic suggestions.
Cool. So if anybody has any, get them either to Ian or Stacy, and we'll take it from there. All righty. Sounds like it's myself and Ian is up on the VA Housing Strategic Plan, but I think it's really Ian
So
and Christine, actually.
yeah, I mean, so we have reapplied for the funding from Virginia Housing for the strategic plan. There was a slight bit of confusion about whether or not the RHP had one already, and whatever. It's neither here nor there. We worked with Virginia Housing to make sure that this go around we are in a good place to get it. We have not. I guess we submitted it less than 2 weeks ago, but maybe not last week, but the week before. We're still waiting to hear back, but once we do, and hopefully once we receive the money, we'll start working with the Spark Mill, which was the consultant that was chosen, and we'll go from there. But yeah, I think I feel pretty confident that we're going to receive it this go around. There was just a little bit of confusion about which strategic plan we were referring to in the application. So looking forward to letting you guys know about that in the coming weeks. So, and I don't know if Christine, if you want to jump in.
The only thing I was going to add is Virginia Housing, since we're applying as the Planning District Commission on behalf of the Regional Housing Partnership, they were using the PDC strategic plan and saying it hasn't expired yet. So you're not eligible for these funds. When I reached out to my rep and said, hey, this is what we were going to use them for, they were like, we'll fix it. We'll just take your application, cut and paste, write up an official letter. So we just reapplied. They've given us all indication that we'll end up getting the funding, but it does have to go through their process again.
So this is going to be impactful for our budget conversation next, Christine. So let's just talk a little bit about timing on this. So I think everybody seems like we're going to get this. It's just a matter of when. Is that a fair statement? So when, in a crystal ball, when do you think we're going to get it? And then talk about process, what you think the process is going to be like for us.
If I had a crystal ball, that'd be amazing. I would guess 45 to 60 days if I have to make a guess. I don't actually know that though.
Yeah, sure.
Once we do hear from Virginia Housing, the steps would be for us as staff to hold a kickoff meeting with the consultants and for them to outline their process for how they're going to want a specific committee. Likely we can use the executive committee or we can have a separate committee set up that will steer the process. But again, until we meet with them in that first kickoff round, I would be hesitant to map out too many of the steps before speaking with the consultants.
When we talk about the budget, I think this is going to become a little bit more important as far as timing goes, particularly about submittal of budget requests to the bodies, to the governing bodies of the jurisdictions. I believe the deadline is somewhere in November, so we kind of have a narrow window here to get this money set up how we want to do it and talk about the future funding needs from moving forward. Am I thinking that about right, Christine, or am I off base on timing on that?
I might be misunderstanding. What is the timing issue with putting in the budget request to the local government? How does that relate to the timing?
I'll let Ned jump in on that, but there's a time we have to make future budget requests to the jurisdictions.
Yeah.
By when, Ned? We're kind of moving into the next agenda item, by the way.
Well, I mean, every government's or each locality's schedule is a little bit different, but generally speaking, their county executive or city managers working on it through the fall.
Right.
So everybody needs to be putting it in. If you're thinking November, December to put the request in, you're kind of just getting it in late as they're trying to wrap up their presentations to get to their boards in January, February. So I would say just because we didn't miss. I mean, wasn't like it was an oversight. It just the way the timing worked in the current year. It is what it was. What it was. But we need to be getting this request in early so that it's not an afterthought or something that misses the full on. You know what I mean? They know it's there and it's not going to be put in at the last second. So I'm thinking by the fall, November, October.
Yeah,
November.
and I have the dates when each of those local governments require those submissions to be put in. I think what I was asking of you, Keith, is how are you relating that to the strategic plan and the timeline for the strategic plan?
Well, maybe it'll come clearer when we start talking about the budget process on that a little bit for next year. But based on our conversations that we had, my understanding is our major lift for the balance of this year. So we moved into the next subject, which is the budget, right, guys? So our major lift for the next balance of this fiscal year, other than the awesome work that Stacy's doing with the sessions for the educational sessions, which are going to hopefully be self-funding, it's really just the strategic plan. Am I thinking that through correctly? Christine?
I'm so sorry, Keith. This might
Okay.
just be me.
Got it. No, it could be me. I'm on vacation, and so my brain maybe not be going right. The remaining big topic item that we need to fulfill for the balance of this fiscal year is really just the strategic plan, correct?
If we do not get it funded by the grantor, then yes, we would want to have funds to be able to pay for that ourselves. And that
So
can either be through.
we just had a conversation where we feel good, we're going to get the money, we just don't know when. But what we have is a body before us. It's not like in 2020, we had a bunch of other items to do. We had a website to do, so forth and so on. The remainder of this year, the heavy lift is just a strategic plan. Is that correct?
That would be the major thing, yes.
Correct. And then The other item obviously would be the educational component, but from a budgetary perspective, that should be self-funding, correct?
Mhm.
Okay. So that's the reason I want to talk about the budget a little bit. We've been going around and around a little bit on the budget item. And some of the conversations that we've been having is that do we really have to do our ask now of the jurisdictions and the other folks for anything above the 25,000 that's already been committed from the commission? Or is this something that we need to get into this ask in October? That's how I'm trying to frame this conversation. Is that making any sense, Christine?
Yeah, I think Ned's gonna jump in.
Yeah, I mean, it's two asks, right? The decision if we need to ask now for now, and then what's the timing of the ask for next year? So and Christine, of course, yeah, I mean, whenever the TJPDC puts its request in on an annual basis, which should be your deadline for the partnership as well. I mean, I didn't even think about that when I was spouting off all the stuff I was saying. But if we're going to ask for the current fiscal year, that's out of cycle, then that decision has to be made, and that has to the asks have to start.
Yep.
And then Keith, I think Keith is just bringing up, we may not need to do that. If we get a grant and the strategic planning is covered by that, we already had some money for staffing of the regional housing partnership anyway. So maybe we don't need to ask the localities and everybody for current money now. Then we just get prepared for the coming budget cycle and next fiscal year.
Yes.
Thank you, Ned. That's exactly what I was trying to say. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you. I appreciate both of you being like abundantly clear. I apologize for my confusion.
No, I think Ned was clear. I was not so much, but
I think what's important to zoom out on is in informal conversations with some of the leadership in the jurisdictions, there was concern that they would not be able to get money this year out of cycle. And that we could certainly put in a request, but it's unlikely that it's going to get funded. And it might be better if we did not ask back to back for FY22 and FY23, knowing that we're coming into that cycle within the next 2 months. And so what Keith and Ned and Ian and I talked about, in the agenda setting and when we are talking about budget items, is if we are able to get the strategic planning grant and we have the 25,000 that's already been committed by the commission, perhaps we run a very lean FY22. Don't do a great deal of fundraising for FY22 and use it as a strategic planning year to better set our direction for FY23, while going out to the local governments and asking for a recurring support of the regional housing partnership, similar to how they support the regional transit partnership, the legislative liaison, and other functions of the TJPDC. I did a presentation to the commission at their last commission meeting. I think it was well received. I'm happy to show you guys. I pulled them up just in case, 3 or 4 of the slides that I used to describe the RHP and the work that was coming up and the financial need of the partnership. But I think our best move moving forward, frankly, this is my personal opinion, and then I think this is up for you all to decide as an executive committee, is not to go back to back asking for funds from the local governments and instead use this year to plan. And so that we are able to go to the local governments and say, with this recurring support, here is what we will be doing on an annual basis.
so that was what I was trying to get to. So thank you, Christine and Ned, for wrapping that in a much better bow than I was able to do. So that's out there for everybody to discuss. I'm in support, personally in support of not doing 2 asks this year and working through the work plan as Christine outlined. And then in October, we start re-asking the jurisdictions and the rest of the partners in there for fiscal 2023. And any thoughts from anybody on that? This is not an action item, so I think it's just a consensus thing. So I think Ned, Colette, Ned, anybody have anything?
I mean, that sounds reasonable to me. I mean, I think I agree with Christine. I think it's going to be pretty hard to get an off-cycle allocation from localities.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, this is one of those things that, I mean, if this grant doesn't go through, that could then muck up the plans of getting a lean year, because you might not even be able to get the lean year done. So, you know, this will probably be a kind of wait and see how this plays. If we get the grant and everyone's fine with doing the lean year, focus on a strategic plan, we're good. We don't have to ask for that money. If that grant doesn't come through, then there may have to be some asks. And it may not be what we had put or theorized a few months ago, you know, for the coming years. It could be a modified ask, it could be something, but I mean, we'll have to be ready that if the grant does not go through, we're either going to have a really, really lean year, or we're going to have to come up with a way to pay for the strategic plan in another way, because otherwise we're just not doing it. Which I don't think we want to do that.
No. And so I think at this point, the best course of action, unless Christine thinks otherwise, is probably just table this discussion until next month, because you should know within the next month if we have this or don't. Is that correct?
I mean, yes, I don't know for sure. They haven't told us a date that they're gonna re-review our application, but I will let you all know as soon as I do.
So that being said, should we start looking at other sources to try to come up with that money?
We're beginning to do that internally already. We're identifying a couple different grants that we might be able to apply for. That's outside of direct asks of any of the partners or any of the jurisdictions, but we're also looking on the back end to see if there's other funding that we can use if we don't get it.
This is an amount, and I've got the amounts that we were doing the annual what's the amount just for the strategic plan again?
20,000.
I don't have it in, how much?
20,000.
Thank you.
All right, so I think the best thing is for staff to start looking at different alternatives, which sounds like they're doing. We'll just see how this process goes over the next 3 or 4 weeks for our next executive meeting. And I think at that point, that's probably going to have, if we don't have a good pulse on if we're going to get this, then we're going to have to ramp up some other alternatives and other asks to come up with it. So I think if I hear Ned's comments correctly, and I've got some background noise, so I may be losing a little bit of this, is then we'll just have to ramp up the ask, because I think we're at this point that we have to do a strategic plan. That has to be done in this fiscal year, or the remaining of this fiscal year. So let's see if we got the grant. If we don't, then we'll just have to start knocking on doors and raising 20 grand to do it. Sound good to everybody? Okay, cool. Ned, does that pretty much cover it? I know you and I are supposed to tackle this today. We're good?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, it's just a matter of, we can't change the situation. We may have to ask in the fiscal year, no matter if it's tough or not. Just got to do it. I mean, things like this do come up. Be great if we don't have to fall into the regular cycle, but if we have to make an ask, then I'm ready to go to my board and make the ask. So
Thank you, Ned. All righty. If there's no other comments on that, Ned, I think you're up next on the legislative update.
So my committee of one had a committee meeting. I think we met twice since the last meeting. So what I'm thinking, I think just from sheer logistics and keeping it in line with how local bodies work with their legislators, is just have it for the current elected officials. So it doesn't become more of a campaign or debate or thing like that. I think it would be more interesting if the RHP, on perhaps an annual basis, met with the electeds and there was just conversation about affordable housing, and that's the tone of the meeting, versus having them come in feeling like they're campaigning or outnumbering one another, that sort of thing. So it seemed like in some casual conversations that is the tone and tenor of it. So thinking like mid to late October, just as that's a good time, or when it could even be November when localities are meeting with their legislators. Similar time when they're thinking about what they're putting forward in the next GA in terms of bills and what they're going to sponsor and things like that. And if folks are interested in participating, I think it would be an evening. It'd probably be 2 hours, like a Tuesday night or a Thursday night or a Wednesday night. I mean, sometime in the middle of the week, do a couple hours. This body would host it, and we could maybe have some questions set up in advance, and then do it virtually and then have, some participation, take some questions from those who maybe chime in. And I think it might be worth the effort. I think the RHP and this body alone could have a good session with legislators. So, and I think people like Delicate Hudson and Cree Deeds and Rob Bell, I think they would participate in their, this is quite a, outside of just Albemarle and Charlottesville, there's others that I think like I wouldn't be exposed to necessarily, but the regional nature of this could bring in others that we haven't talked to. So I think it's worthwhile, and I'm willing to continue working on it, plan it, and get it pulled off if everybody else seems to think it's worth it.
So does your committee of one need any help?
I would think the only thing I might ask is if maybe if David would be willing, just for contact information. I mean, if we can, I'd probably ask this body for a date and input on that at the appropriate time, maybe even by email. But if there's no objection, I mean, some of this will be driven by their availability than more so than anything. And then, just some help getting make sure I don't miss an elected that maybe is covered in our regional body. Just double checking me on that regard. But I don't think we need to put a full committee together unless somebody else is really interested in helping. Sure, let's go.
Ned, with the state election in beginning of November, would we wait till after that and talk to whoever might be new? Or do you want to catch the people on the way out, or what?
So how it's worked in the past, just now, I only have my own experience from being in Albemarle. When we've met with legislators after an election, when the person representing has changed, we still only meet with the elected officials. We invite the whoever's the incoming to be there as an audience member. Then once they're the official, we've brought them back in individually and met with them in a different way. But typically when the elected bodies meet with their state representatives, they only meet officially with those who are the current office holder.
And of course, they don't get seated to January 1. So even though they're elected, right, the current official is the one who is still in the seat until January 1. I think October would be good. I think the only thing, Ned, just for what it's worth, some of them might be also running for a seat, but the reality of it is they're the current sitting legislature, and those are the ones that we need to be talking to. Is your vision, Ned, to have both locals and state folks together, or just the state folks?
I was thinking just the state folks, because we're represented on our body. I think obviously we would make sure people were aware of it. But the idea is for the local level or the regional partnership to have a substantive conversation with these folks in many ways, like our local boards do. And, UVA, I'm sure, meets with elected officials at certain points. So it's kind of on that level, which is what, I mean, there's benefits to having a campaign or a candidate forum. It just changes the tone and tenor of it, which I think just having a good conversation with state electeds is something this body hasn't had the opportunity to do. I think it could be worthwhile.
So thank you, Ned, for taking this on. One of the reasons I was asking, did you need any help? And this is.
Did I get lost?
That may be me. Can you hear me? This is kind of directed to staff at this point, right? We're about ready to become September awfully quick. If we're looking to do this in October, that only gives you staff a month and a half or whatever to organize this, find a place, set it up. I mean, is that achievable on your side, on staff side?
And yes, it's achievable. Knowing a lot more about it would help. And then on the side, I just want to make sure he popped off, Ned popped off, but I did talk to David about this with a bit of detail, and he said for Ned to reach out to him directly.
Okay.
But I can share that with Ned once he's back on.
Yeah, Ned and I have a meeting next week, so I'll make sure that we chat about that. But I just want to make sure that we leave you enough runway.
Are we looking at like getting an in-person venue and Is that what you're thinking? Are you thinking sorry,
But Ned said virtual.
okay, that's what I heard, but then when Keith said getting it, okay, so we're hearing virtual event.
I didn't hear virtual, but I've been having some background noise, so I may have missed that. So
Virtual is-
Somebody also said
virtual is
virtual
definitely-
too.
Yeah, virtually is definitely able to be pulled off by October. I think renting a space would be our consideration.
Good. Then I misunderstood it. Thank you. I was thinking it was in person, and that was going to be pretty hard to pull off in the next 4 to 6 weeks. All right, cool. All righty. So I guess we lost Ned. Any questions on that any of us could answer? All right, Christine, you're executive director. We are on track on time. So
I would say the next time that this is to your last comment, sorry, Keith, I'm processing a lot slower today than normal. To your last comment, Keith, I think this body can help identify like questions for the panel of electeds. So we can really, discuss together what it is that we're hoping to bring before them. I do like the idea of it being organic, but I also don't want it to just be left to like awkward silence. Does anybody have anything they want to bring up? I want to make sure it's a good use of time. So using this body would be helpful to do that.
Yeah, and well, just on that real quick, I mean, I just would acknowledge that like I don't have a lot of background, or I don't think I can help a lot with that, to be quite honest. But I know that many of you can and have that knowledge, and I have full faith, especially Ned with his experience about the county and also working with David. So I think we've spoken about this previously, but I guess I was just kind of curious. Like, it was the intent for us to have a separate kind of our own separate kind of time with elected officials to come from the unique regional perspective as opposed to the individual jurisdictional perspectives. And if I completely missed that earlier, I apologize. But is that fair to say that that's why we feel it's important to have our own instead of just kind of signing on to other agendas that the city or county are creating on their own?
Ned, you want to tackle that?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened to my connection there. The question was what the rationale for doing this was. Is that the gist, Anthony?
Yeah, just I guess I remember the last time, and to be fair, I may have completely missed a lot of the conversation, but last time we were talking about kind of wanting to support existing efforts that a lot of our interests would likely align with in terms of the city and counties, their own legislative agendas. Us having our own forum, would the intent be to kind of maintain that unique perspective of a regional approach and like regional issues that might not be addressed by city or county?
Yes, but it will also be, the topic will get its day in the sun. Affordable housing won't be discussed when we sit down and talk with legislators. We're going to talk about either obstacles that are in the way of doing a land use application that maybe leads to or it touches affordable housing. But it's not like when we sit down and talk with them, we're going to talk about our climate action plan and our housing policy album.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So affordable housing and these big issues that, we've got a regional transit partnership, we've got a regional housing partnership. All of those might be mentioned as topics of import to the locality, but unless it's a specific thing that the locality is saying, we need your help legislatively to get at this, it won't be discussed. So I think that this body then says affordable housing is worth having the conversation, and it's not just one locality doing it. Since it's regional, I think it could have more of an impact on them and say, here are some affordable housing issues and what can the state, we're meeting on a regular basis to talk about what the localities are doing and what they can do. What's the state doing? Let's start having that conversation. And frankly, I don't know of any other organization that would be best to do that. Like your organization might go meet with legislators and advocate for your specific things. This body is going to legislate for what we're doing regionally to try to attack the issue from all different angles. We've got nonprofits, for-profits, elected bodies, et cetera. So I think it could catch their interest. Having them all together could be, you never know. It's different meeting one-on-one, as you all know, with a legislator than it is with 10. So it could be interesting. We may do it and decide, that was great, but we don't have to do this every year too. You know what I mean?
So
That helps a lot. Yeah, I guess I was just for some reason in my realm of thinking that they were all affordable housing asks. Of course, localities have many other things they're asking of legislators. So it does make sense to keep something specific on housing. Thanks, Ned. That makes a lot of sense.
To put a little
Because they,
bit of,
you know, as an example, the statutes, right? We had to get the state to make that change. So a lot of a past meeting was talking about what's the state going to do to give localities control over their property. And that's a very specific legislative ask. So talking generally on topics doesn't usually happen.
so just to put a little different spin on that conversation, Anthony, and you may know this, so if you do, I apologize in advance. We are a Dillon rule state, right? So there's only so much NEDS Albemarle County can do unless it is really formed and functioned from the state level. And if the state folks don't know we need this help to do this at the local level, they just don't know. And this organization, because of its regionality, will have a carry the day a little bit easier than the individual jurisdictions or the individual portion of what we consist of. Do I kind of frame that correctly? Thanks. All righty, we're a little bit behind schedule. We're cutting a little bit into Christine's executive director thing. So thank you, Christine, for allowing us to take some of your time. So see if we can wrap up with that, please.
Yep. And then Ned, I mentioned while you were off that I did talk to David about this, and he's happy for you to contact him directly. He's expecting you. So
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. A couple of the items, a lot of them have already been covered. We're in a bit of a holding pattern on a lot of the housing programs that we have right now for various reasons, either awaiting award notifications, the Virginia eviction reduction pilot that Ian is working on. Met with the consultants today. There's a steering committee coming up, or sorry, an advisory committee meeting coming up mid-September. So we'll be able to see some of the preliminary work that the consultants have done. So the last 4 weeks have been pretty silent because the consultants are working away at their end of the deal. Same with the home ARPA funds. We're in a holding pattern awaiting guidance. We don't have any further guidance on that. So we're just holding tight. The home CAPER, which is the annual performance and evaluation of the home goals that are set through the annual action program. Those are currently in public comment, and it'll be going through public hearing September 2nd. So that's something that'll be done at our commission meeting here. And then the housing plan, as you all know, was adopted by the commission. And so we're going to do another, we sent it to the local governments, but we're going to do another big push out of the completed plan to try to better engage all of the housing and housing tangent stakeholders that this regional housing plan does exist. We have been to a couple of the local governments. We go to Nelson in another 2 weeks or so, Margaret, to present the housing plan and the county specific chapters to the local governments. And then the final thing I had, we already covered. I was going to talk about the Virginia Housing Strategic Plan, but we already covered that one earlier. Happy to take any questions, but those are the updates. I mean, our housing program here, as you guys know, is growing very rapidly. We've got a lot of great opportunities, but it's also an area that's really hard to budget and look ahead for because we have to await, guidance pretty much on all of these different grants and how they can be used. So we still are very hopeful that the Virginia Housing Development Grant, the one where we'll be putting new units in the ground, we're very hopeful that we're going to keep our ambitious timeline of getting something out by October. But again, we have to work with Virginia Housing on their timeline. We had our, what would you call that, an orientation grant kickoff meeting with them. And they, this is a pilot for them as well. They're putting this funding out to all 21 planning district commissions, which touch all of the counties and cities in the state. And so they're trying to be as flexible as possible to allow great things to happen while still keeping some guardrails up. And so that program is kind of morphing as we go. The more questions we ask, the more we learn, the more flexibility we understand that it has. So originally that grant, just as an example, it was required that we partner with one partner to develop units. And now they're allowing us to partner with multiple partners so that if there was some funds that went in one direction and some funds that went in another direction, another example, Ian, is there another example of something that has changed that it's, you know, we have to wait until they tell us what we're allowed to do with it and they're amending it kind of as they go?
That to me was the major distinction, is that we can split it across. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be as strict anymore. It seems like they're really trying to make sure that as many units are constructed as possible. So
Yeah, and whatever works best for each, you know, region is acceptable under that grant. So as we learn more, we'll share it with you all. There's a meeting coming up. There's 2 different tracks for that grant. All of the grantees will be getting together with Virginia Housing to talk through. Track 1 will meet together and track 3 will meet together. So as we learn more about that, we're very anxious to get these programs up and running. But we're being patient as well.
That's big news that you can split it. It means more work for the partnership potentially, but I was surprised initially that it was not going to be set up that way. So I think that's great.
I can think of another example, Greg, now that you just said that, it sparked my memory. Originally, we were not allowed to use this funding for any units that are already in the pipeline, meaning it had to be developing brand new units. One of the newest things from one of their last released Q&As that they've been sending us is that if a project that is in the pipeline has gap funding that they have not secured, we are also allowed to use this as gap funding. So it may be that we don't have to take a project from, we have to do rezoning and get it pad ready and get new units, but rather we can contribute to projects that may have had difficulties due to the pandemic, cost of materials, and haven't been able to close some of their gaps. So again, those are the types of things we're learning as we meet with Virginia Housing to talk through our plans and what the other PDCs are planning to do with their funds.
Any other questions for Christine? Comments? Thoughts?
I can
Just
just say as a
appreciative.
staff plug, Keith, that I feel always compelled to do this, but I know you guys know this, but I'm really grateful for Ian and his ambition and his persistence. He's really a great addition to our team and brings a lot of capacity with him, which is fantastic and has made it a lot easier around here to not feel like we're spinning so many plates without enough people holding him up. So I'm just really grateful for how quickly he is catching on, the great questions he's asking, and how engaged he's been in all of the stuff that we've been working on.
And how he manages this guy Smith is really awesome, actually. Does a great job at that. That was your opportunity, Ian, to come back. You didn't take it.
Don't do it.
Didn't take it. Didn't take it. So, you know, this is, as somebody, I think I'm either the second longest sitting commissioner in the Planning District Commission, or if not the longest sitting. And of course, housing is important to me, but this is really great news. It took us 3 or 4 years to get here. But without you, without the RHP, without everybody on this call, we would not be having these opportunities. So thank you for everybody. And we're making a difference, believe it or not, every day. So this is awesome, awesome stuff. So we're at 2:44, 2:45. We're at the roundtable portion. Unless anybody, Christine, you have anything else? Are you good? Good. So as everybody can tell, I'm in a bed and breakfast. So people are trying to check in at the bed and breakfast, and they're wondering why this guy's sitting here talking to himself. But we could just do a quick roundtable. Anybody want to share something for a minute or two, and then we'll wrap this up if it's okay with everybody. So Margaret, since you're the first one on my screen, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I don't really have any updates for you, dear.
Okay.
I'm not doing it. I haven't been doing anything. Just sitting out here.
That's not true. That's a lie.
No,
That's
we
a
opened
lie.
our list up for the voucher last week. We got 125 people on the list in 8 hours, and we're estimating 20 to 25% of them are homeless. So that was probably the biggest news for Nelson.
So
Actually, we're covering 6 counties now. So.
I missed the last part of it. What was that number?
20 to 25% of 25% of the applicants were homeless, but not all of them were in the 6 county area that we cover. Some of them were outside that area. So it's just a huge number, I think.
Thank you for being there. and Thank you for being there so somebody can reach out to you to help them. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, and just my 2 cents on the legislative thing. I think it's really important to go this as a regional thing, because then the rural aspects, because we probably would never have a voice, unless we could, pile on, with the county and the city. So thanks for doing that.
Well, thank you. That was the whole purpose of this setup, is to have all of us function as one organization to push this, our agenda forward. So thank you. Greg, anything to share on your end?
We're excited. We've got 160 affordable units on the boards right now.
Good for you.
So it's very encouraging that despite construction costs, that's the case. So we're right off the mall now, storefronts on 5th. Do drop by and say hello when you're on the mall.
Well, you don't say that, because I'll actually do it. Just got to tell me what kind of coffee you take. I'll bring you some coffee. Anthony, what's going on in your world, sir?
Oh, nothing. Just kidding.
I know it's not true. I saw you trying to get a space in the Studio X.
Yeah,
I know that's not true.
Yeah, we are posted a job description, which is exciting. Administrative coordinator role for TJAC. So if you know of anybody who you think would be a good fit, please let me know. We also had AmeriCorps Vista start on Monday, which is also exciting. So TJAC is expanding, which is very new, and we've outgrown this office space. So I am looking for office space as well. It's a weird time to be looking for office space, because I don't want to get into a contract and then not ever end up actually going into the office. So I think we're looking at something just real flexible. We're looking at Studio X because it is so flexible, which is why I ran into Keith. And then after running into Keith, decided I can't work there because Keith's there. No, I'm just kidding. I love you, Keith. I'm just joking.
I have a bar. I have a bar in my office. I'm just saying.
So yeah. Otherwise, programmatically, no big shifts. Really, still working through Premier Circle project, sheltering project, which continues to move along and also be a unique challenge and opportunity every week. But yeah, no other large programming changes except for the EHV vouchers, which were these emergency housing vouchers. So happy to partner with Margaret, and they've helped out huge with capacity to be able to handle a lot of that, almost all of it on their own, which is amazing. And I would love to talk with you, Margaret. I would be so curious about the numbers that you're talking about. I know you said 20% of people who applied, but I'd be curious, like, what does that translate to households for that, we're homeless in that area? Because that's one area that we have like very little data about homelessness in the rural counties. So anyways, those housing vouchers were crucial for us locally. We also got those laced up with CRHA, which are going towards homeless families. So that was the latest kind of programmatic update.
Thank you, Anthony. I'm only kidding. It's a coffee bar, and you know that, Andy. It's not an alcohol. It's a coffee bar in my
It's
office.
the best coffee in town, though.
It is actually. It's really good. Colette, what's going on at UVA?
Well, we're still plugging along on our initiative. I've had the pleasure in the last couple of weeks of speaking with Keith and with Anthony and Sue and county executive and the city manager and others. We've kind of launched a new communication plan around our affordable housing initiative, kind of getting some feedback that we haven't been communicating enough. So people in the community think that we're not doing anything. And that is, couldn't be further from the truth. But in terms of our next steps, we're looking to probably release some potential sites for our housing project by the end of September. And then, we would move from there into some community engagement on those particular sites, feedback from the community about, what they think about the location and et cetera. And then to an RFP process down, several months after that. So that's where we are.
Thank you, Colette, for sharing, and thank you for that initiative and reaching out. It's a huge help. I can't speak for Anthony, but that was a huge help on my end to get an update periodically. And apparently your office has sent out a bunch of calendar invites, so we're all set up for the next couple of months.
Yeah, so we're gonna reach out every month. I'm doing some, and we've got like 3 or 4 other people on staff who are working on our initiative that will reach out to various people. There's a list of around 20 key individuals in the community that work in the affordable housing space. So
again, Colette, thank you for doing that. Anything else to share?
that's it.
Ned, you're up next.
I don't think that I have a whole lot to share. We're the county's still meeting virtually. We've pulled back a little bit. We're back to mask mandates in the buildings, things like that, as we watch how COVID continues to play out. The housing policy, I think that we've already met once where the housing policy got voted in and passed. So some of the things that will be coming in short order after that is Dr. Bethius gets working on that stuff, and trust fund and working out incentives that developers were interested in. So there could be quite a bit of things that jumping in to get that policy enacted. So Albemarle can achieve its strategy, the strategy that we've set out. We passed a firearm ordinance that firearms are no longer allowed on county property. That authority was granted to us from the state. So the county took that on to make our own decisions on our buildings, community centers, and in our parks. And then outside of that, it continues to be business as usual with, the applications and whatnot that are coming before us. We got a busy fall, I know, in terms of agendas and what will be ahead of us. And that always leads us into CIP or our capital improvement projects, getting ready for the next budget cycle already. So it's always when we slide into fall, it'll quickly be budget meetings in February and March. So we're just getting ready to take the slide.
Thanks, Ned.
Sure.
From my end, I'm going to pivot a little bit here to another hat that I wear as the chairperson of the Land Trust. A little bit of news that those who may not know that, but we formally have merged with Piedmont Housing Alliance, and we've actually renamed the Thomas Jefferson Community Land Trust to the Piedmont Community Land Trust. That was a personal goal of mine for quite some time. This merger is going to be very impactful for the affordable housing space. So we're in a 1-year dating period, for lack of a better term, so we're in a process of moving over to a complete merger by the end. We're probably about 8 or 9 months left in that process. I do want to take an opportunity to thank 2 people on this call, Stacy and Ned. I want to share some rock star stuff that we've done of the Land Trust over at Spring Hill, which is a development at the end of 20 and help me out, Stacy. It's 20 and Avon, right? At the tip of 20 and Avon. We're working with the developer over there, Stanley Martin, to produce or deliver 15 affordable housing units at 243,000. They're roughly 1,700 square feet, 1-car garage, yada, yada, yada. We're on our 7th contract on that. We were able to leverage $140,000 cash into nearly $1.8 million worth of affordable housing for folks, somewhere between the 60 to 80% AMI. We're about ready to sign contract for the other 8. We're trying to raise that additional capital for $160,000. But when folks tell you it costs a lot of money to make affordable housing work, that's not necessarily true. There's ways to do that. So this is really interesting, and it's an exciting project, and could not have done it without Stacy and Ned, because these guys were with us step by step. So I want to take an opportunity and thank Stacy and Ned for that work. And it's pretty awesome stuff. Anybody want to know anything more about it or take a look at these units, give me a call. I'll be more than happy to show them to you. But the new construction units are pretty rocking. So we are at 2:55. I know there's some staff and Stacy. Would anybody want to jump in to talk about what's going on in their world? If not, we can wrap up. Oh, Good. Look at this. We're done at 2:56. All righty, guys. Well, we have hold on a second. We have a second public comment, so I think we need to do that before we get into trouble. Is there any public on the call? No? All righty. So if there's no public, I'm going to adjourn at 2:56. I'm going to go back to the beach. See you later, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.